Broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network and simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web, this is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
Go figure. Go figure. Who would have thought, I know I didn't, who would have thought the miraculous turnaround at the last minute yesterday in Israel to give Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not a win, not a pretty good win, a devastating blowout win when the pundits, the analysts, the Obama administration, everybody had this guy dead, buried in the grave, politically finished, off the world stage. We need a new negotiator. We need a new reset button. Netanyahu is too archaic, too black and white, good and evil. The world doesn't work that way. Go figure, ladies and gentlemen.
Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Well, it happened, and there's a lot of reason for it. We got a great show today. Got some very interesting guests weigh in and share their analysis, their feelings, their thoughts. And tomorrow's show, too, Thursday, we're going to complete our package of coverage for this week, which has been simply outstanding. Now, Damon, you told me earlier that you knew that he was going to win.
I had a very strong feeling. I said it on the air 2 days ago when everything, when I was going against the grain.
Yes, you were. You were going against it.
He was going against the grain.
I must admit, I became a, not a naysayer, but I was getting convinced that the economic issues were going to supersede national security. It happens all the time with human beings. But what he did at the last minute, and I didn't quite grasp all of this. He had a series of yeses. He said, or no's, yeses and no's, depending on how you look at it. He said no to a Palestinian state. That is huge, ladies and gentlemen. He said no. He said no to Iran getting the nuclear bomb. He said no to a divided Jerusalem. And he said yes to the continuation of building settlements, letting Jewish people build Jewish homes and Jewish land. And that resonated very deeply with many of the people on the right who were going to vote for other parties on the right. And his Likud party got something like 29, 30 seats right now, 4 or 5, possibly 6 ahead of Herzog. It's huge.
They had him at 21. They had 24. They were predicting 24 to Labor, 21 to Likud, Netanyahu's party. So he got almost 50% more seats than the press was predicting in their polls.
Well, I like what Levin said. Levin had a good analysis.
Mark Levin, what did he say?
He goes, Bibi wins, Barry loses.
Bibi wins, Barry loses. Yep. Here's Barry right here.
Barry, what happened? And thank Barry.
Barry got his butt kicked.
Thank Barry again for his making the voters mad over in Israel for his hopey changey campaign that really upset a lot of people.
Yeah, and folks, Tom Trento here at 9 minutes after the hour. Enemies of the State, the name of the show. The United West, that's our organization. You're on WSBR Radio, broadcasting out of Boca Raton, all over South Florida, and in Tampa Bay, WHFS 1010 on the radio station, worldwide on the internet, theunitedwest.org, on Breitbart TV, on Tea Party Community, a whole bunch of various websites. And we brought you a fascinating week of coverage with folks on the ground. We're going to do that again. Right now, we're going to go over to the Wall of the West.
We will.
Tell me when I can go over to the wall.
You can go over to the Wall
I can go to the Wall of the West.
Go to the Wall of the West. Go
ahead. Here we are over here, the Wall of the West.
The Wall of the West.
And what we're going to do, we have, again, a series of guests today. We're going to start out with a gentleman who's had a very interesting lifetime. In fact, in his short years, he's packed in what 10 people couldn't pack into a lifetime. Maybe in the future, we'll get into some of that. But right now, we'd like to bring on a special guest, new to our show, Mr. Jack Abramoff. Jack, how are you?
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to bring you on our Wall of the West. There you are. We are the United West, trying to unite the West against some of the bad guys out there. And you are a special guest on our Wall of the West.
Thank you.
All right, Jack, as I said, people are hearing your name. They're going, is that the guy? Who was that guy? When you're, I don't know, you're at a birthday party and you have to introduce yourself and somebody takes a step back, how do you typically introduce yourself, and introduce yourself that way to our audience, please?
Well, I usually just say my name is Jack Abramoff, and that pretty much does it in 99% of the time.
Suppose they follow up and say, so what do you do, Mr. Abramoff? What do you do?
Well, I say that I'm a former lobbyist, and that I'm now working on various causes and activities, but not lobbying.
But not lobbying. And you've written a masterful book on identifying some of the problems within the lobby system in the United States. And maybe in the future we'll get into that. But through the years, you have been a solid advocate of the state of Israel, and that's why we have you here today. I'd like to discuss your thoughts, your feelings on what's taking place in Israel with this election right now, and a couple of other issues once we go from there.
Well, I, like many supporters of the state of Israel, and frankly, supporters of freedom around the world, breathed a very big sigh of relief last night when the Israeli voters did not do what the American voters have done in the last few elections, which is put in as their head of state somebody who is questionable about whether or not he will defend their country, and reelected, it seems reelected Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah, your experience with watching the national security concerns over in Israel and the hot spots. I mean, this is a country surrounded on all sides by people that don't like Jewish people, don't like Christian people. Netanyahu seems to be extremely strong, and we're a supporter of the prime minister. Yet, for some reason, there's a bunch of people that want to try to negotiate peace with people that seem to be committed to their destruction. Can you help us understand how somebody could think along those lines?
It's very hard to figure out why anybody would think along those lines. I think that they exhibit the same naivete, terminal naivete, that liberals did for so many years with the Soviet Union, projecting onto the Soviet Union and the communists that were running the Soviet Union, and frankly, the communists that are still in the world, and the terrorists now that have replaced them in many cases, this projected mirror imaging of what they think they're like, and therefore other people must be like that too. And they don't understand that there are people in the world who are just purely evil and hate the West, hate Christendom, hate Jews, and want to kill all of us, and have wanted to do so for centuries. And these people just won't accept that. They think that just sitting down and talking, and you remember in the old days when Andropov became the head of the Soviet Empire, they kept talking about how he listens to Glenn Miller music and he drinks scotch, and therefore he's just like us. And this is the same kind of idiocy. And so unfortunately, what's shocking, it's one thing for people in America to have this mental illness, but for somebody who's living in Israel, where they are literally within a cab ride away, trying to hurl missiles, shoot guns, kill people, how anybody could vote for their own suicide is astonishing. I always say I usually say it in the context of people voting, Jewish Americans voting for Obama, it's like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders.
That's a good analogy, Jack, and maybe, again, in the future, we could have a philosophical discussion. My observations have been, I'm an evangelical Christian. My observations have been that only seriously religious people, Jewish or Christian, identify evil as part of the human makeup, as part of the individual, and the left tries to take evil out of being a personal characteristic and make it some social component that can be solved with federal money or something. And that's another conversation. But you were a former lobbyist, and if your phone rang after we hang up with you and somebody says, the Prime Minister of Israel would like your advice on what he should do now, how would you advise the Prime Minister going forward from here?
Well, I think the prime minister was, thank God, handed a mandate to not buckle to the demands of the Obama and the State Department, the Kerry State Department. So I think what he needs to do is continue to build an alliance with President al-Sisi in Egypt, continue to enable the relationship that has started to flourish quietly with some of the Gulf states that understand the threat of Iran, continue to build the relationship with Azerbaijan, with Kazakhstan and other places, and to build an alliance that should include the United States, and hopefully after this next election will, to shut down the Iranians, to encourage regime change, which is very important there, and if not, to prepare for the military action that's going to be necessary. We cannot have the Iranians acquire a nuclear weapon any more than we could have had Hitler acquire a nuclear weapon. And so I think that he has a lot of jobs he has to do, obviously. There are a lot of economic issues that have to be dealt with in Israel, and there are a lot of other matters. But in terms of the geostrategic plate, he's got to continue where he's going, I think, and become more forceful. He's also got to deliver, as I think he did in the last days of the election, a very strong message that the way the Palestinians are behaving, this constant support of terrorism or activism in terrorism, this constant campaign to vilify Jews and Christians and non-Muslims as some sort of inferior beings has got to stop. And if it doesn't stop, every dollar should be cut off from these people, and everything should be done to overthrow these people. Otherwise, we're going to be seeing the threat continue there as we see it all around the world from these nuts.
Yeah, Jack, we appreciate your passion and your forthright speaking. Very refreshing. You've mentioned the Iranians, the Iranian situation. Again, this administration seems to be misunderstanding the worldview of Iran and their supremacist view of reality. Give us a little insight into how Americans, we deal quite a bit with opinion makers and grassroots people. How should the grassroots people and opinion makers view the Iranian regime and their quest for thermonuclear weapons?
This regime is founded in terror by the Ayatollah Khomeini and all of his thugs that came in 1979 and overthrew the moderate government of the Shah there. Okay, it wasn't a perfect government, but it was pro-Western. And it was certainly not this kind of crazy, nutty government that they have over there. They have since that time steadfastly been attacking the West. The West spends its time trying to deny that they're being attacked. That's where the energy goes. Trying to pretend that they're not the enemy. Trying to pretend that they can be somehow molded into some kind of regional power that would be reasonable. The Islamic Republic of Iran wants to take over the world, period. They say it every day. They do everything in their current power to do it. If they have nuclear weapons, can you imagine how much more effective they'll be in spreading their reign of terror? So the West needs everybody in the West, and including all of these numbskulls in the West who are denying what's going on, needs a policy of shutting these people down and doing everything we can to splitting that country apart. Its component parts, by the way, there are about 6 component parts there. There are Kurds, there are Azeris, there are others there who don't want to be part of it. We got to do everything we can to split them apart and change that regime. The people of Iran probably want that regime change. Obama did everything he could to stop that, if you remember, a few years ago.
Absolutely.
That's what we've got to do.
Absolutely. All right, when you say we, back in November, there was a regime change in the United States Congress. As a former Republican lobbyist, should the good folks of America, the good conservative folks, be excited about this new configured conservative Congress, both in the House and in the Senate? Or are we overstating what's going to take place with the U.S. Congress?
Well, look, it's better than a Democratic Congress, and it's better having a Republican majority than to see Harry Reid preside as he was over the Democratic majority. But let's not kid ourselves. The Republicans, unfortunately, especially the establishment Republicans who run the party, have never been interested in taking the kind of steps necessary to correct problems. Just look at how much of the federal government has actually been cut over the years, including, by the way, God bless him, and may God rest his soul, President Reagan, who we all loved, even during his time. And I was active at that time in Washington, eventually heading his grassroots lobby. The fact is, all we ever tried to do was slow the pace of growth of government. So if we rely on Republicans, the Republican leadership, the Republican establishment, to fix things or to somehow solve things, it's a big mistake. Conservatives have got to exert immense pressure, far more pressure even than they feel now, continually on these folks, or they will not do the right thing. And my hope is that movements like the Tea Party movement and others that will be burgeoning and growing, hopefully, in the future, continue to push the Republicans to do the right thing. At least you can push the Republicans in the right direction. You cannot push the Democrats in the right direction. They are opposed in every fiber of their being to what is needed to save this planet. However, the Republicans at least know better. They're just cowards. They need to be pushed in the right direction.
Hi, Jack. This has been fascinating. I know you have to get going. How about if we check in with you regularly, get an update, and maybe dive back into some of those Reagan stories, which are very encouraging to people today. How about that? We'll check in with you in the near future.
It would be my honor, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
We're off to Israel for a couple of weeks. We're going to be reporting back from there. When we get back, we'll be in touch.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Take care. Jack Abramoff, everybody. Going to be, I think, a good addition to our team here. I'm going to go back
Fantastic.
over
That's
here
what he's saying. Yeah.
and sit down.
That was strong.
Yep.
Passionate guy, let me tell you.
That was better than I've heard any elected official from this country sound in over a decade at least. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I heard someone with words that strong with what really needs to be done with these hostile regimes.
Well, Jack has been through a lot. If you know his story, he's been through a lot. He was a lobbyist and went over to the dark side, got in trouble, but he always was a very serious Orthodox Jew, very, very religious man, and held to the principles of the Judeo-Christian worldview. And then his experience on the wrong side of the tracks, as often happens, it helps you become more alert to what's right, what's wrong. And now, back on the right side of the tracks, he has that tremendous perspective of being involved in the system that was perpetrating evil in many respects, and now being able to critique the system and a clarity on what's going on in the world.
Well,
and he's got an inner strength about him, too. I don't know if that came across.
Yeah.
Guy's awesome.
He has a real inner
we can
strength
see
about
why
him.
he rose, in his early years, and if you just channeling his energy in the correct direction, I think he could, be a powerful force. I mean, someone who's, been there, come back, gone to the dark side, then come back, and can take that passion and channel it in the right direction. I think that's huge.
Yeah, you're not gonna play any games with him. He's played every game. He's been on every side of it. Plus, I didn't mention this on the air. He's a Jersey boy. He's from New Jersey.
Oh, okay,
all
right.
So he didn't grow up where I grew up in Newark, but he grew up in a different part of New Jersey. So. Where they gamble a lot, ironically. But Jack Abramoff, thanks, Jack, for being with us. We will be back in touch, and the world needs to hear you. God is not done with
messaging.
you. God is not done with you yet, Jack.
Yeah.
That was, could you imagine an American politician speaking that strongly on what the truths of the matter is? I can't think of an American politician that can even say that evil exists in the world. Not a Democrat. There is not a Democrat that can even tell you evil actually exists in the world.
And he can argue the issues, not just say them with clarity, but argue them effectively. But the last thing in the world he probably wants to do is run for office. Somebody who could run for office, probably in Israel, probably get elected, is our good buddy Mike Ganoe.
Wait, you can't go yet.
I know is it's 4:20 after.
Now you can go.
It's 24 after the hour on both of my clocks, so I can keep track of the show.
Now he's got multiple clocks.
All right,
so
now
he's
25 to 35, 40, 10. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. All right.
Okay.
Congratulations.
The Great Wall of the West.
The Great Wall of the West. Now we're getting the transitions finally correct on this silly thing here. So you want to talk to Michael, or is that who you want to talk to?
I'd like to see Michael Ganoe on the ground. There he is, Michael Ganoe. Good afternoon, sir.
It is another beautiful day in the Jewish state, Tom, and you are looking dapper.
Well, thank you. You have a nice red tinge about you.
Yeah.
Probably red with envy that you have been involved
It's under
in
heat lamp.
an amazing turnaround in Israel. Tell us your feelings right now and when you found out this win was for real.
You know, I'll tell you, the atmosphere here among the right wing, just good, wholesome, conservative people in general, was one of great fear. Understandably, because the world media, the world governments, Islam was all saying, you know, pushing for Bibi to lose. And especially here in Tel Aviv, crazy. As they say in Hebrew, Mishugah. It was very Mishugah Ken. So I'll be honest with you, I was nervous because I thought, now listen, I'm an American. I'm not a citizen of this country yet. And, you know, I report against Islam and what they do here and how, you know, their activities here, and the left. And if a leftist government was in, it would be very difficult for me to do my job, to be honest with you. It would be difficult for you guys to do your job. So when this victory came, and I'll tell you, the people here overall are the best people in the world. I was elated for them first and foremost. And as Joram Ettinger, who is a regular on your show and who loves you guys, I love what you do. You're necessary there in the United States to tell the truth. It was a win for Israel first and the Jewish people, and a win for the United States also, and for the West.
What do you? Yeah, we were just discussing, the guys and myself, late yesterday. I'm going, all right, you know, this isn't going to happen here. And then we heard that Netanyahu came out very clearly, said no Palestinian state. You know, we're going to stop Iran. Just that no Palestinian state.
That was a huge.
What are the reverberations from your experiencing living several years in Israel, running all over the country, working with Jewish people, IDF, all of that? What are the reverberations of that statement, no Palestinian state?
You know what I love about this country? It's the real deal. There's no, I don't like to use bad words, but there's no BS in this country, you know? The left is always saying, but the conversation goes like this, but we still need to try. We need to try. And I'm like, you've tried for 66 years, and what do you get in return? Dead Jews. But people outside of Tel Aviv and in the majority of the country, they will tell you, we get it. They don't want peace. They say one thing to the West and another to us. In their media, they still tell them to their face, yeah, we want peace, but then it's the hush tones, but when you're gone. And so these people, look, Bibi always tried to come to the negotiating table for the sake of the West and the United States and everything. It was a front. But I'll tell you, the respect for Bibi went through the ceiling when he said, no two-state solution. Mike Huckabee said it. Everyone realizes that this is Islam, plain and simple, and they don't want peace.
Exactly.
And I was proud of them.
Beautiful. All right. Excellent. Michael, we're going to let you go right now, and we will see you. Next time we see you, we will see you.
Really see you.
In real life in Tel Aviv. So we'll be out there in just a few days. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Michael Ganoe, Hershey's for Heroes. We will have some Hershey bars. We've been getting emails from folks. They wanted to know how to get them to you. We sent them to your website. So we will see you in just a few days. Thank you very much, Michael Ganoe.
Yeah.
Tom, guys, I love what you do. Thank you for taking a stand for truth.
Amen. We're working together. Fighting for the West
All
and the
right.
great wall of the
Ganoe.
West.
All right. Go.
All right.
Yeah. There we go.
We got a lot going on here at 4:30, 30 minutes after the hour. Actually, I'm trying to get in touch with another analyst in Israel. Let me throw it to you guys for a second. What do you think the situation is going to be? Both of you, Damon and Mark, are fairly well up on the situation in Israel, and we're all learning. I mean, we've talked to experts about the complexities of the parliamentary system. You don't vote for a person, you vote for the party. What do you guys think are the chances of forming a conservative government and not having a bunch of crazies in there. And what do you think about the fact now that the Arabs have, they're the third largest party with a unified 14 seats in the Knesset? What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, the Arab coalition, they're going to start killing each other soon. So I'm not worried about the Arab coalition. It'll last about as long as a piece of gum, and then they'll all spit it out, and they'll be all over their shoes. As far as the mandate from on Bibi's side, if he just got like a slight majority of like 28 over 27, yeah, then have a tough time working. But if you start to get into the higher numbers of 29 and 30, that becomes a mandate, and he can actually put together a nice unity government out of that and do something positive. And I do think it's a mandate. I really do think this is another repudiation of Obama tactics, of Obama methodologies, of Obama spirit, but in Israel. And the people, just reject, that type of weak stance towards Iran. They do not want the two-state solution. They understand that.
Mark, people want to see you.
No,
looking at me
I don't
standing here
know.
like
I
that,
know.
like-
Yeah, but you're better looking.
Trucker
than I am.
wise, oh, like
See,
this.
I hear you guys say, "See, here I am."
No, you're
See?
making a lot of sense. There you are. Okay.
All right, but anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on that. Damon, you got something? to say?
Yeah, I would say there's a very, very high likelihood of forming a conservative government. He won in a landslide. I mean, the numbers looks like he's going to have 30, and then when you bring in Naftali Bennett and a couple of the religious and conservatives, I think that it's not going to be nearly as messy as a lot of people were predicting. I think the conservatives, that's it. Israelis spoke. They do not want to let their country become the victim of Islamic jihadis, whether they be the Sunni neighbors or the Shia Iranians with the nuclear bomb. Israelis have said exactly what Netanyahu said at his speech to Congress a few weeks ago, and that Israel will no longer be the victim.
Yeah. Well, the issue, one of the issues is going to be the Arab bloc, and as we've been explaining that, we're trying to wait for somebody coming in. Is it him, Doctor? Oh, great. We're live on the show, folks. It's 32 minutes after 4. Here on the 18th of March, we're doing a follow-up, a wrap-up to the phenomenal victory yesterday. We have one of the world's top experts on all things Israel with us right now, Dr. Martin Sherman. Should I go over to the Wall of the West?
No, I got to reset it because I was not expecting it that quick.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
I've got devices here.
Okay, I know. Okay, now you can go.
Now I can go over to the Wall of the West.
The Wall of the West, okay.
And where's our friend?
Right there. There he is.
I don't see him. There he is, Dr. Martin Sherman. You are now on the Wall of our West, the Wall of the West in our new studio, sir. How are you?
Would help if we get the volume?
There we go. How are you?
Do we have his volume?
Nope, his volume's not on.
Your volume is not on. Turn your volume on.
Yeah, we don't have him on volume here at all.
All right, well, we'll get that set up.
Okay.
You can look at me with the camera over here.
Okay,
like
hold
this.
on a second.
Let me introduce Dr. Martin Sherman while you guys are
here.
sorting that out.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Martin Sherman is obviously a professor, holds a PhD, governmental affairs, is a world-renowned expert on Middle Eastern geopolitics, is a regular columnist where he writes an article each week in the Jerusalem Post called In the Fray. And you got to follow his work. He has some of the most didactic and analytical work. He's a writer that when he writes, you could see almost like pieces of a puzzle coming together. He'll say there are 3 points that are essential to understand why Bibi Netanyahu should be the next prime minister. And he's not a great fan of Netanyahu, but he knows that for the sake of Israel, the West, and America, Netanyahu should have been elected. We're going to ask him that once we get
we're still having some technical problems.
audio
here.
sorted out.
We're having some audio problems on his end, and
we can come back to him. Mm-hmm. Why don't we go to our next guest, because we have a bunch of people coming in. No, and we're working on this guest. All right, I got a bunch of stuff for you that we can work on here. Are we back on me? Yes, we're back on me. 34 minutes after Tom Trento, 34 minutes after 4 o'clock. The name of our show is Enemies of the West. You ask, why is it Enemies
State.
of the West?
Enemies of the state.
Enemies of the state on the Western Wall.
Well, because everybody's always stealing our.
Hey, I'm coming up with a second show called Enemies of the West.
Oh,
What's
you're
the big deal?
Oh, well, same thing.
That's a good name too.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
Say, get that. Get that.
Get that URL.
That's the next show, Tom.
That's the next show. Enemies of the West. Enemies of the state that everybody's ripping off. That's the name of our show.
Yeah, everybody's ripping it.
It
Fox
doesn't
ripping
matter.
it off.
There
yeah.
was a movie that was out 10 years ago called that, but we didn't rip that name off of that. It was.
Yeah.
We created it. But the name of the show, Enemies of the State, is very, very simple.
Yeah.
Our work is simply to identify individuals or entities, governments, if need be, that are indeed in a position to harm the United States of America. And we understand the global issues at hand. And when we say enemies of the states, we mean the United States, but we also mean other states that are national security partners. And when you're dealing with the world's number one threat, Islamic Jihad, number one threat in the world, and under the rubric of Islamic Jihad, we have affiliate groups like Al-Qaeda, which are small terrorist gangs in a sense, small in terms of millions. We have the Islamic State, which is a coalesced, increasingly growing, very large semi-state entity, certainly functioning as a state, starting to train their soldiers as a state would, starting to use money and social elements as a state would. And then we look at Iran as a country that is indeed an enemy of the state of America, state of Israel. So our work is to identify the threat indexes of these individuals or these state entities, and then do the research, the hard research necessary to factually present a case why they ought to be defeated on the field of battle in a kinetic way with guns and bullets and all of that. And we believe the Islamic State ought to be defeated. Whether or not Americans should be on the ground fighting these guys, that's for a future show. There are ways to do it. But certainly our area of expertise, the United West, we are in the information warfare sector. We use the assets that we have accumulated, whether it's a knowledge base, whether it's a resource base of subject matter experts, whether it's this facility we're in right now, a phenomenally beautiful television studio that can present material. And our goal is to present the material, to identify particular problems, and then move good Westerners, Americans, Canadians, Australians, Brits, whomever, move them to a point of understanding the threat of Islamic Jihad, motivating them to get involved in the process politically and activistically, and then moving them to action to save the principles of the West. That's what we're all about.
Dr. Sherman.
Do we have him?
Yeah, we have
I
it?
think we have his audio now.
We have his audio now.
Okay.
So hold on a second, Tom. Let me zoom you in here. Okay, go ahead. Go over to the wall if you want to.
I can go to the wall, the Great Wall of the West. We could try this again.
There we go.
And
Okay.
we've already introduced Dr. Martin Sherman.
Okay.
While he was muted.
There
while
we
he
go.
was mute.
Now
Dr.
we have it.
Sherman, how
There
are
we
you?
go. There we go. Now we have it.
Hi, how are you, Tom?
There we
good,
go.
good.
Yeah. All right.
This is day 3. The guys are jumping around in the control room. They overcame. They
Yeah.
pushed the on button. You know.
All right.
This is day 3 of our coverage. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We had a 2-hour special yesterday. And to tell you, I was very, very surprised when I heard the results late last night. Let's take a few minutes. You've been directly involved in many ways, writing and speaking, on what took place yesterday. Share your feelings. Before we get into analysis, share your feelings right now. How do you feel as an Israeli at this moment, sitting where you are?
Well, I must say I feel a sense of tremendous relief. I posted on my Facebook a single word, phew. And I got quite a deluge of responses from people liking it and commenting, etc., etc. I think that we narrowly avoided an almost unthinkable situation whereby if the elections had gone the other way, we would have been in a situation where the head of the ruling party was someone who recently said that the idea of a Jewish state is inappropriate. That was Isaac Herzog. And so I think the fact that Netanyahu managed, or it looks like he's managed to keep the premiership for himself is, I think, a tremendous relief. As you probably know, I'm not an uncritical apologist of Netanyahu, and I've had certain severe criticisms of things he's done and things he hasn't in the past. But in this case, I think the choice was a no-brainer. I believe that if the what was perversely called the Zionist unit, the Zionist Union, which in many ways was an anti-Zionist union, if they had have prevailed in the election, I think we would have been on the cusp of disaster.
Dr. Sherman, you just used the term, it was a no-brainer to vote for Bibi Netanyahu. Yet a lot of people in Israel voted against Bibi Netanyahu. Give those of us in America that are looking at a redo of President Obama's
Hope he
2012, hope he changey, and we saw V15 over there, and we had folks videotaping him, hope he changey. We heard Itzhak Herzog talking about hope and change. What is going through the minds of Israelis? These are people that live in the midst of all the enemies, and they walk and consciously vote for a guy that you say would have been a disaster for them. How does that work?
Well, let me say two things. First of all, I think in many ways that you can characterize the political syndrome in Israel much the same way as you can characterize the political syndrome in the United States. You have a delusional, dangerous left and an impotent and incompetent right. And so also, although the right has been correct in its analysis and put forward sensible ideas, it's been very inept in promoting them. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I wrote an article recently called Coup d'etat. Basically what you've had is a massive rallying of civil society elites backed by foreign funding to try and unseat Netanyahu, not because of any political arguments, but by ad hominem attacks, trying to undermine his personality, trying to attack his family, and trying to turn public sentiment against him. Now, a huge amount of money was spent in that, and it had an effect. I think that Netanyahu could have run a much better campaign. And in fact, I think that you see in the last few days, when he really harnessed himself to the effort, he made a big difference. I think in the last 3 times that Netanyahu has been elected, he's almost snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, because he's run atrocious campaigns. If you remember, I think it was in 2009, Likud wasn't the biggest party, but it was the Kadima headed by Tzipi Livni. But because of the structure of the election results, she couldn't put together a ruling coalition. And so Netanyahu, by the skin of his teeth, became prime minister. And then when the elections came along, I think it was in 2013, he was deemed to be a certain winner. And he ran such a poor campaign that he had to cobble together a very unwieldy coalition, which eventually came apart after 2 years. And here again, when he dissolved the government, he looked like his re-election was a sure thing. But again, he didn't run a very smart campaign, and it was touch and go until the last few days, until he really devoted himself to the campaign and changed the tide. I believe that if they'd run a more thoughtful and more assertive campaign and planned it earlier, they would have got 40, maybe 50 mandates. because what his opponents are saying is so obviously unfounded, ridiculous, dangerous that it could easily have been dismissed if there was a concerted attack on it.
Wow, there's so much. We only have a couple of minutes left, Dr. Sherman, but going forward from here, you just did a quick overview of Netanyahu's premierships over the past few years. What is the bet? Is it a good bet that he's going to be able to put a conservative right-wing coalition together to run the country?
Well, I think that's the probable outcome. It's very difficult to see any other plausible outcome that could have any durability. So I think that that's true. But I think that he has to really gear now for some very severe challenges, both domestic and international. I think he has to put much more emphasis on something that I've talked about before, and this is public diplomacy, sort of a diplomatic iron dome to protect Israel against incoming attacks of delegitimization and demonization. And he has to devote much more resources to that, much more attention, because that, in my opinion, in the last 2 decades has been the biggest strategic failure of Israel, and particularly the biggest strategic failure of Netanyahu.
Yeah, and along those lines, we will stay tuned for sure. We're leaving in just a couple of days, Dr. Sherman. We'll be out there and we will sit down with you, continue these conversations by the sea, and you'll meet some of the team here. We're looking forward to it. Thank you for all your great work, for your commentary in our show, and we'll see you in a couple of days, okay?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Martin Sherman, ladies and gentlemen, one of the foremost experts on Middle East affairs, living in Israel and in the fray. That's the name of his column in the Jerusalem Post every week, but also in the fray, dealing with these issues. Okay. What does that mean? Oh, Scott is with us. Okay,
right.
okay. Well, I had the other guy in there, but we can move that other guy around. Yeah. What we want to do right now, 48 minutes after the hour, I like the Wall of the West.
Yes.
The Great Wall of the West. I like that over there. I like that. If I'm here and I point like that, can you point to the wall? Can we show the wall to the people?
No, we can't.
If I want to show them the wall?
No, you can't.
Can't do that? Okay.
No, you can't do that.
But if we had more money, we could, ladies and gentlemen. This is the commercial. If you like the work we're doing, if you like how we integrate the need for a security regime in Israel to augment the lack of a security regime here in the United States, then go to our website, theunitedwest.org. Donate securely. We'd appreciate it. Contact me, Tom, at The United West, if you'd like to make a very large donation. But we're still looking for that trust fund baby.
Oh, don't do this
with
again.
the deplorable life
God.
and no excitement. No anything.
We got 2 guests to go.
Oh, do we?
Beg for money another time.
We need money. We need money.
Beg for money some other time.
All right, who we got
guess
next?
What.
Who's
Got Scott Spages.
Scott Spages, our good friend Scott. We saw him out in Washington, D.C. last week. Scott is a Jersey boy, lived in Florida, then went up to Washington to work. He's an evangelical Christian activist, very involved in the political scene, big supporter of the nation of Israel, big supporter of America. We wanted to get his pundit comments on what took place yesterday in Israel. Let's bring him up. Scott, good to see you.
Well, you want to walk over there?
I could walk over there. You want me to
walk over
continue
to the wall.
exercising?
There you go.
All right, to the Wall of the West. There's Scott right there. You're on the Wall of the West, Scott. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You were very involved for many years at a very large church in South Florida, Calvary Chapel. You were very public in your work. Your church had Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speak in your church. Were you there that day?
I was not there that day, but you are correct. That's about 15 years ago.
That was a while back. He came over and spoke there. As an advocate of Israel and of Christianity, what were you going through yesterday? Just share your thoughts and how good Americans can get involved in the process of saving America, saving Israel, saving the West.
Certainly. Well, by the way, that church has a flag of Israel on its podium at all times, which, as the pastors there will tell you, that's not a political statement. That is a biblical statement. My emotions were, generally happy that apparently we have a good election outcome, which, thanks to our president, we almost didn't have. I have a general feeling of concern, Tom. We are now in a position where our country, which is the world leader, let's call truth. We are the world leader. We have been blessed with enormous ability to keep the peace in the world. You can argue the last 50 or so years have been the most peaceful on the planet, and that's mostly thanks to us. We are the number one ally of the nation of Israel, and we are now remarkably divided. Our leader, Barack Obama, did everything he could to defeat Netanyahu, which, by the way, the media in this country seems to have missed that, which is, thank God for media like you. If we didn't have this media, we wouldn't even be hearing this story.
Hang on 1 second, Scott.
Sure.
We did a little research this morning. We looked at CNN and MSNBC. Nothing.
Zippo.
The story about
Died.
what's taking place in Israel is like the bottom of the page, Unbelievable.
And the story they are telling is I watched Anderson Cooper and CNN last night, and the story is that it was that Netanyahu won by playing the race card. That's the story they want to tell, which is absurd.
He's an Islamophobe, yeah.
It defies reality that, these people are there trying to kill him. I wore my FDNY hat, which is my reminder of 9/11, and we should use this moment to be reminded of 9/11. We were attacked by Arabs, by Islamists. And he is on the front lines, as you guys say all the time, of that battle. They are the eastern front of the battle against Islam. And so we need to be connected to the election yesterday in that regard. Our team won yesterday. Unfortunately, though, you could say our head coach has basically, put part of our team on the sidelines and said we're not going to use them anymore. So the story should have been, part of the story should have been that our administration, blatantly involved themselves in the election. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder the picture of Reagan in the background, but what if Reagan had gotten intimately involved in England's elections to try to help Margaret Thatcher get reelected? What would the media have said about that? So it's very disturbing to me.
All right, Scott, we got about a minute left with you, but you're an expert on grassroots organization. You're hired to come in and help organizations get people out to vote and do all the mechanical work. What we have from today, Scott, we have 600 days until November 8, 2016. Not that we're counting, Scott, 600 days. What advice do you have to conservatives, in particular evangelical Christians, to get engaged in this next general election?
Well, for people like you and I have been involved in politics for decades now, we always count. So we are counting. Well, it's an issue of just to continually be activists and advocates. Many good organizations in this area where I'm now living in Northern Virginia, American Majority, Leadership Institute. People should go to those organizations and become better trained on how to use social media, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's email, to advocate. I even want to just quickly go back one step. When you were here in Washington rallying for Benjamin Netanyahu when he spoke to the Congress, as somebody that's run local campaigns for a long time, I understood the media wanted to tell the story that he was coming here to win the election and that Obama couldn't be a part of that, but that's what the Republicans were trying to do. Well, I knew intuitively, having been involved in elections for a very long time, just because he was coming here wasn't going to assure him the election. The average voter in Israel might have been put off by that. So I had to ask myself, why was he coming here to speak to Congress? Well, he was coming here based on principle. The principle being that he was extremely concerned about our foreign policy and that the world was getting more dangerous, and particularly the danger for Israel was growing. So we can then carry that narrative forward into the next election and say, I hope this is not strictly a foreign policy election, but this should be an issue in the next election. And that's what we have to be able to do from the grassroots up, from the churches. We need to hear this in the pulpits, that whether or not Iran has a nuclear weapon, whether or not we have the right policies towards them and the right negotiations with them, we have to be very careful that this is an important part of the next presidential election. And
Beautiful.
I listened to Ted Cruz spoke last night in Arlington, and he's a lot of young people were there last night, people in their early 20s, and he spoke very clearly to that group of people and said, listen, you're better communicating the issues of the day to your generation than any of us are. So it's so important. Whoever is listening on your show right now has to not just listen, but then they have to become an advocate.
All right, absolutely. Scott Spages up in Virginia. Keep warm up there. When we were up there last week, we froze. I got sick, but we're better now. We're heading to Israel. We'll be in touch with you when we get back. You take care. God bless your work.
Best wishes. Same to you, Tom. Thanks,
Scott Spages, our good friend up in Virginia now. And what we can do, we got time. We're doing okay here. If our interview with our next guest goes a little over, we'll sign off the radio, and we will stay on the internet. We have the capability of doing that nowadays. Do we have our next guest with us?
How fast do you think things happen, Tom?
Boom.
Remember that money thing I was talking about?
We need a bigger boat.
Remember that begging money thing I was doing a little earlier?
Yeah.
Why do we need money? Maybe we can get another computer and another volunteer to help do this sort of stuff. But
one thing I think what Scott was bringing up was that
he had some very good points.
Yeah. And what I saw during this election is when Bibi started to go towards the conservative values, started to be saying more of the stuff that we've been saying about, no, there's not a two-state solution. I think that motivated the voters to get out and vote.
That is so big in my mind, not in my mind, in my mind. That is so big that he just shut down the whole two-state thing.
Boom.
What do you think the State Department, they make states. They deal with states. What do you think's going through their head?
The Tri-Delta Kappa sisters were just like Kappa, Jen Psaki and Maria Harf and
Samantha Power had a stroke.
And Susan Rice and all
had a stroke.
All of them.
Valerie Jarrett had a stroke.
No wonder they wanted to get him out of there because, he's just
Well, the implication of that at 47 minutes after, we have Arie with us. All right, I'm going to stay right here. We'll close the show out from here.
Okay.
You can stick him over this shoulder, right? My right shoulder.
Okay. I'll take care
right
of it.
over here.
Just go.
Put him right over here. Do you want me to go over there?
No, just go. Yeah, go.
Okay.
Walk.
All right, I need direction, Mr. Director. I'm going over here to the Great Wall of the West.
Yeah, okay. Now we'll bring up
Hey, Arie.
Hi, how are you?
We're
Much
happy.
better today.
We are happy. Our guy won. Israel's going to be okay.
That's the big question.
No, we know you always give us a very sober analysis. Arie Egozi, folks, our dear friend in Israel, and you've been right many, many times through the months. What do you see now happening with the formulation of a coalition?
Well, it's a big victory for the Likud, for Benjamin Netanyahu. He has a good chance to form a right-wing coalition, better than with the results that were included in the different polls. They were all wrong. They failed completely.
Yeah.
Now, he will be able to do it, I think, in a week or two. He has already started to talk with the other parties. The question is, the big question is what will happen to the foreign relations of Israel? Only today, Secretary Kerry is in Lausanne, and he was asked by journalists to his reaction for the result, and he refused to answer. That shows the cold shoulder of the White House and Washington to these results. The results are democracy, as I said. The people have said what they wanted to say. They voted freely, but the U.S. is not happy with it. We don't need any other proof. I think that even in Europe, some politicians are not happy with that. And after forming the coalition, I think that will happen.
I'm sorry, Arie. We have a hard break here. We have to go off for the radio side, but we'll continue this. So, it's Tom, if you want to sign.
Yeah, let me sign off right now. We have to leave WSBR Radio 740 AM Boca Raton. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
But stay on.
And on the internet and other communication ways we're on. We got about a minute left on the internet here, Arie. The relationships are going to be strained. What advice do you have for our listeners and our viewers, who many of whom are conservatives and really support Israel? What should we be doing now?
To explain to the administration in Washington that only today terrorists in Tunisia killed 17 tourists in a museum. Only today, the Israeli Defense Forces tried to neutralize an IED on the Gaza border. Only today, a terrorist ring was discovered in Jerusalem. So the terrorists are not waiting for the election results. Terror is around us. And this is the issue. Okay, the elections are over. These are the results. I think that now the administration in Washington should sit with Benjamin Netanyahu, with the government, and say, what can we do to improve the situation against our common enemies, ISIS, Al Qaeda. Never mind the names, because they are common enemies of us, and Iran, of course. And as I said. There are no signs that any agreement will be signed soon between Iran and the nations about the nuclear program. Only a week ago, the Iranians have exposed that they have built a long-range cruise missile. Yep. What for? 2,500 kilometers. That's against Europe. That's against Israel. So things are happening, and to insult each other, this is not the solution. The results are here, are solid, and they have to sit down and talk business and not insult each other and forget all the other very not important things. That's my advice.
And on that's a great note to end our show on. That the conservatives here need to put pressure on this White House to grow up. There are children in the White House over here, Arie. They need to grow up and deal with real-world politic, the real-world politic. Arie, we will see you in a couple of days. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your participation in our show. You're a wonderful guest, a dear friend. We'll see you in just a little bit, okay?
Thank you very much. I'm waiting for you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, that's it for today, folks. We are out of here. Tomorrow's show, very interesting guest. Some people would call him a bad guy. Stay tuned tomorrow. See for yourself.